With the first pick in the NBA draft, the Washington Wizards have taken AJ DeBonta. I think with AJ being number one, it kind of makes sense, especially since they kind of went all in and paid Trey that contract.
Yeah, I think he fits. He's to me, he's the best combination of having a high floor and a really high ceiling. He's been the number one guy in the class forever. He lost it on like one of the sites at the very last second, but like for being like consensus number one, it's like him and LeBron are the only two people to ever do it from high school all the way through like college and to the draft. So I mean, you really can't go wrong. It's an A+ pick for me.
Second pick, the Utah Jazz, they have taken Darren Peterson.
I think it's the right pick. Darren Peterson, he had a kind of shaky college year with some of the stuff surrounding him, but when he played, he was an absolute monster. Like, he scored at an insane clip. And if you go back to his high school tape, he was even better in high school. Like, he showed flashes of advanced playmaking, things we didn't get to see last year, but I believe are in there. For the Jazz, I think pairing him with Keontae George just unlocks so many things for you on the offensive end. They're going to be a really dangerous shooting team that can play 5 out, can do a lot of different things. And I mean, they might have just taken a player with the highest upside in the entire class. So for me, the Jazz, they get an A+ pick here.
Darren Peterson, the talent is unquestionable. The only thing you worry about is his ability to stay on the floor. And by all kind of accounts, people seem to think that that's not going to be an issue going forward. Pairing him up in the backcourt with Keontae George, the shot making, the danger off the dribble, I think he can play on ball and off ball. We saw that at times with the Jayhawks this year. So should be an exciting team, even though they may be still kind of fighting into the play-in in the Western Conference.
And with the third pick, that leaves Cameron Boozer. I think this makes the most sense just with the top two. The way it's shaken, we kind of figured they were going to get the leftover of the crop. But that being said, I know Cameron Boozer still has a good argument to be the first pick in this draft, even though he wasn't. And I think they're still getting a very promising player with him at 3 here.
Yeah, I think Cam Boozer, I think of all three of us, I was probably maybe slightly the highest on Boozer among you guys. But like you said, Brandon, he's definitely a number one pick caliber player. He just happens to be in the 2026 draft class. So from Memphis to get him at number 3 and pair him up with guys like Cedric Coward and for however much longer, John Morant, I think he's going to impact their ability to compete in every single game right away. Whether that leads to them putting together a bunch of wins right away is still up in the air. But if they are going to go into a full rebuild by moving on from John Morant, there's not a lot of guys in this class that you would like to start a rebuild with more than Cam Boozer because of his ability to score, rebound, and play make. He can do it all. He's a kind of a tweener between the 4 and the 5. And I think they got a really good player here. Probably, I would say at least a grade A pick here.
Next up at number 4, the Chicago Bulls have taken Caleb Wilson, and I think this just makes sense. I know there was some talk about the Bulls potentially maybe moving in the draft, and them taking Wilson here, it just makes the most sense. Like, I wouldn't try to get too cute or too fancy. Like, just go ahead and get your potential franchise guy. Maybe try to use that pick at 15 and just bring in some nice pieces to start your rebuild. I give this pick an A+.
And at 5, the Clippers take Keaton Wagler out of Illinois. This kid has one of the best stories in the draft. He was outside of the top 150 on almost every website. He was like 150 was the highest he was ranked anywhere. He didn't play any major shoe circuit his entire time in high school, and he came in and left college in 1 year as a top 5 pick. For that reason alone, this is a kid that I believe in. I think this is a great pick for the Clippers. I think it was a real case for them to like maybe trade down and get some more picks, especially with like the impending investigation stuff. But if you're going to stick it here, I think this was the best pick to fit alongside what you already have and like some real upside. Like, I think he fits a lot of what they like: positional size, shooting ability, and like some real length. I just think he fits a lot of what they like, and he's just a safer bet to me than a lot of guys in the class. I think at the very least he's going to be a really good role player for a long time. So for the Clippers, this pick for me is something I can get behind. This gets an A from me.
With the 6th pick, the Brooklyn Nets have taken Michael Brown Jr.
I personally would have went A-Cuff, but I think Brown is like really, really good. And I think he fits a lot of what they like. He can really shoot the ball, man, and he has some like flashes of being a really special playmaker. For me, I didn't see quite enough of those flashes last year. Like, I didn't see enough of that like turn into production to be comfortable taking him above guys like Acuff, or like I know there's some buzz that he might even go before Wagler. I wouldn't be comfortable with that, but at 6, I think it's a fair pick. He's not bad.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was a chance that a fully healthy season from Michael Brown could have been enough where he could have showcased more of this skill set to be inside the top 5. People always discredit Darren Peterson for not playing enough games. Michael Brown played less games in college than Darren Peterson. So if the injury concerns are completely washed out of the way, and of course it's scary whenever you hear the young players that deal with back issues during college. I think the most recent one was probably Michael Porter Jr., and that's a big reason why he fell down the board when in his draft class. But to get a talent like Michael Brown here at 6 to pair up alongside some of the other scoring threats in Brooklyn with Michael Porter Jr. and now the new acquisition of Julius Randle, I think they've got a really good playmaker to play with.
So the Sacramento Kings with the 7th pick, they took Darius Acuff. I think everybody kind of expected this as well. A good way to kind of move towards a somewhat brighter future. It's really just on the Kings now to put talent around Acuff and leverage his strengths in the best way possible.
I think the Kings, this was who they wanted when they landed outside the top 4, and there were some worries that, you know, a team before them in between that range could end up snagging Acuff and making this whole last year almost not worth it potentially. With what we saw at Arkansas, I think in this range, he was probably the highest of the boom or bust, a guy that could become a superstar player, a best player on the team.
Yeah, for me, this is like a really, really good pick. To me, he was the best guard in college basketball last year. He played the best, he produced the best, he has all the skills you want from a guard, minus the defense. But on offense, I think he's by far the best offensive player. Taken like at the guard spot after Peterson. I think Sacramento got their lead guard of the future. Now it's their job to build around him. I'm gonna go A. I'm gonna go A+ again. I just think you got a top 3 talent, top 3 to 4 talent at 7.
With the 8th pick, the Atlanta Hawks have taken Kingston Flemings. Now this one, for me, was a little bit interesting because I think there were some reports that they might be interested in Burries as opposed to Flemings if he were still on the table. Again, I think this is another solid pick. I feel like he's probably the most complete guard prospect. I know Cameron would probably debate that, but I think this is a solid pick because you have a guy who can kind of be a game manager. He has that quick first step. I think he can read the game and do everything at all 3 levels. I think he'll fit right in with what this Hawks team is trying to build, just with the defense that they have. Now, granted, I don't think he's going to be like some lockdown defender, but I think he is somebody who can come in and just maybe mug things up at the top of the key, start things off. And we've talked about, like, in the past, some of the 3-level scoring that he has. I think the main thing for him will just be using his speed to get to the rim and really just leverage all the tools that he has.
Yeah, for me, I really like Kingston still. However, I do have a couple concerns that I have with him that I don't necessarily have with the other 3 guards taken ahead of him. He is really small. He's the smallest of all the guards that have been taken. He's about the same. He's a little bit taller than Acuff, but his wingspan is only like +1 inch, I want to say. Which, like, I think might hamper him a little bit on defense at the next level. I think he does like have a better defensive foundation than guys like Acuff and Michael Brown though. So kind of like washes out to me. He does have blazing speed, like really fast, gets up there quick. I think getting to learn from CJ McCollum, like a really good vet who's been around for a long time, who like really gets buckets, I think will be like a really big plus for him. However, him at the rim, like his at the rim finishing was a little concerning, and like he's gonna have to like finish through contact a little bit better than what he does to like make an impact early on in his career.
So the Michigan guy going to play for his coach.
Merez is gonna be a guy who, like, when you're in the playoffs, you need somebody to guard. He can guard multiple positions. Again, he's limited as like an offensive player, but I think he just does so much defensively, and he's like physical, tough, gritty. Like he's kind of just a playoff player. maybe some of the other guards after him, or the other players, I mean, turn into like better players, but feel really good about his floor that like I'd still be fine taking him in this range.
I still give it a B though, just because I don't know how high the upside is. However, I do think he really fits what the Mavs like to do with like, this is like the most Masai Ujiri pick ever, kind of. If you look at how like the Raptors are built, he's kind of a guy that fits into that like mold. And I think like putting him next to Cooper, their defense on the back line is going to be pretty good, especially if Cooper can like start to bring back what he looked like in high school on defense.
Next up with this pick, we're going to be doing the Milwaukee Bucks haul together. They got Braden Burries at 10. And with the 13th pick, they had the Miami Heat's pick as part of that big Giannis trade. And they were also able to get Nate Ament. Burries was definitely a guy who I was high on. And I think he does have some potential as a lead guard. And I think they took a nice upside swing with Ament. He's a tall 6'9" guy who can shoot. And I think he needs to improve some of the physicality a bit, and I think we saw some of that towards the end of the year. But I think for a team that's kind of heading into a new era without Giannis, this was a pretty good pickup.
I'm a little bit lower on it. Personally, I think to make the move like you do, to get Giannis to Miami, you pick up this 13th pick. It makes sense, I think, to take a swing on a high potential type of player like Nate Ament. And I think it's definitely better than taking him at 10. So I think Braden Burries definitely raises the grade of this first round for them. He's kind of a safe pick, in my opinion. He's probably got, among the guards that are in this top lottery, I think probably the lower chance of becoming, a superstar player. I think Derek White in his future, that's still a tremendous, product that Milwaukee could be potentially getting, a player like Derek White from Braden Burries. But with Nate Ament, I mean, you guys mentioned some of the physicality issues. I also think he needs to work on that handle. That was kind of a big selling point of him as an NBA prospect coming out to Tennessee this season, was him being able to be kind of a playmaker, scoring wing that can handle the rock a little bit to get his stuff off. And it looked a little bit loose this year. Struggled when guys would body up against him, losing the ball, turnovers. So if he can work on that a little bit, improve that part of his game, I think this could be a pretty solid outcome from at least the first season from the Giannis Antetokounmpo move.
Okay, next up with the number 11th pick, second player in the Michigan trio went with Yaxel Lindeborg going to the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, he's definitely a versatile player. He can, like you say, he does a little bit of everything. As long as he shoots it, I think this fit will work with the Warriors. That's to be determined, but I mean, it definitely looked a lot better his last year at Michigan. I mean, just talent-wise, if you're going off what the player can do at this moment, he's probably like a top 7 or 8 guy in the class. But the age thing kind of made him fall a little bit. I have it as a C+. If I were them, I just would have liked to take Mara instead of Yaxel. I had him rated higher on my board, and I think he fits better with their offense, and I think he would have been able to move Draymond to a more impactful role on defense. But I mean, Yaxel's still a good pick, so C+, not a little above average.
Okay, next up with the Oklahoma City Thunder, we have Ade Mara. I think the rebounding and just having another front court presence is something that was kind of considered a big draft need for the Thunder, especially with how Chet Holmgren performed. And they kind of went out and addressed that with Ade Mara. But now I think kind of an underrated part of this move is that they have Thomas Sorber, Isaiah Hartenstein, Chet Holmgren, and they just have a really beefy front court now because they have two rookies essentially coming in to help add some more depth here.
Yeah, this is like a huge front court. You have the 2 rookies in Sorber, who effectively the rookie, Mara, Hartenstein, Chet, and then you also have the other Jalen Williams, who really played well throughout the season last season and had a few big moments in the playoffs as well. So they're definitely stocking up the front line. We'll see if they keep all those guys. If they do, they seems like they're kind of building for the Spurs in a sense. It'll be interesting because he slots in as your Hartenstein replacement in a way. He does a lot of the passing things Hartenstein gives the offense, while potentially, like, since he's so young and he passes at that level, like, he could potentially become a better passer and like potentially like a real hub of offense one day. It'll be interesting to see how they use him, if they use him that way, which I think they will. but I think the real swing skill here is his defense and specifically whether or not he'll be able to move in space. If he can move in space, I think this is a home run pick. If not, you could find yourself taking somebody who's out of the league fairly fast.
All right, so Charlotte Hornets, the 14th and 18th pick, have taken Hans Steinbach and Christian Anderson.
Yeah, I think he's a nice addition to their big room. You kind of have like Kalkbrenner as like your rim protector. Diabate is like your guy who can switch, and then you have Hans, who's like the real offensive big. I really like him as a screen setter. I like him as a rebounder. I think there's real potential to shoot one day, which could like really elevate this Hornets offense. Overall, as a package, I like Christian Anderson. I don't like him more than Phylon, though. Phylon seems to be kind of dropping here. For that reason, personally, the grade I would give this is a B- as a package.
All right, so with the Bulls, to complete their haul with Caleb Wilson, they have added Dalen Swain.
Yeah, I think it's tough to see his immediate route into being in the rotation for Chicago. It's probably either somehow fitting in as kind of like a two guard or coming off the bench in some fashion. If the jump shot is able to improve over the summer and become somewhat of a threat early in his career, it's a pretty solid pick. I mean, at 15, we like the talent of Dalen Swain with the defensive ability, the length out there on the floor. But if the jump shot's a little bit slow out of the gate, it's hard to see him finding like that consistent role right away on a team that already now has some question marks about the floor spacing due to the lack of shooting from the 3, 4, and potentially the 5.
Yeah, it's a real not shooting roster here with the Bulls. But for that reason, I think personally, I like the player. I just don't like the fit. So for me, this will be my first below average grade of the night. And the Bulls get a C- for this pick.
Now for the Oklahoma City Thunder at 16, we have Bennett Sturtz. I think this is kind of a little bit of a shock because I think they definitely needed another creator after kind of watching some of the playoffs, but Sturtz is not a guard who I kind of envision fitting that mold. I think he's kind of the one who has the most question marks about his ability to separate and just get by some other players. But that being said, I still think he does a lot of other things as a guard. He passes, he shoots the ball well, he can play off the ball.
Yeah, for me, this is like a guy that he's kind of like they took Topic a while back. Plays similar to me in a way. I'm not a big fan of him over some of the other guards that I think were still on the board, but I mean, Sam Presti at the end of the day, kind of just got to trust what he does. So I'm not going to rate it too low, but for me, this gets a C.
But next up at 17, the Detroit Pistons, they also traded up for this pick from after the Grizzlies made another trade, and they went up and got Ibuka Okori. Overall, I think Okori, he has nice bursts, but he is kind of a smaller guard. He probably is the smallest guard in this class, but he has the wingspan to make up for it. So I think the Pistons are just banking on him to be the guy who can consistently get by his man and get to the paint and just punish defenses that way.
Yeah, I think the secondary scoring was definitely a priority for Detroit in going into this draft and really this offseason as a whole. The playoffs, really having to rely on Tobias Harris to kind of be that secondary option. He had some good stretches and he had some bad stretches. So finding other ways for Detroit to find scoring other than with Cade Cunningham, and that's kind of what you're hoping from Ibuka Okori. A little bit undersized, but when you already have a guy that's 6'7" at point guard, like you can afford to have maybe one guy that isn't the tallest player out there at his position. I would say this one is probably around maybe a B-. I think it's a little bit high for what I thought Ibuka Okori was, but in terms of the fit per team, I see the logic for it, so that's why it escapes the kind of C+ range and gets a B- for me.
So with the 19th pick, the Toronto Raptors have selected Allen Graves, and this is a pick that was kind of made in mind with Mamu Kalishvili going into free agency. I definitely butchered that, but I think he's a guy who, he's not really the most athletic player, but he can hit the standstill jumper. He makes plays with his hands. He has decent instincts, and I think he kind of does things that you would expect from a Raptors big. So I think with them trying to replace some of that production that's leaving, I think this is a solid pickup. I'll give this a C+.
Next up, the San Antonio Spurs took Jaden Quaintance with the 20th overall pick. When healthy, he's for sure a lottery talent. He might be the best defender in the class. He's very switchable, an absolute monster on defense. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see it because he was injured last year with knee problems. For me, this is a fair upside swing here at 20 for the Spurs. At worst, he's kind of never gets right, but if it works, you could potentially have a Rob Williams level defender to put next to Wemby. And for that, I'll give it a C+ grade.
Next up at 21, Memphis, after trading back quite a bit, they end up taking Kareem Lopez. Maybe a little bit higher than some maybe a little bit lower than others. I've started to get a little bit higher on Kareem Lopez over the last couple of weeks. Still a young prospect that played overseas. I don't know exactly where he's going to play exactly on this Grizzlies rotation right away, but I think he's a nice developmental piece that for a team that just drafted Cam Boozer at the top, they're clearly looking at a somewhat potential rebuild by maybe moving off John Morant. So as a long-term project, I'll give this one a C+ as well.
Yes, for the 76ers next up at 22, they got LeBaron Philon, who kind of had a fault, it seems like. Now, granted, I really like this pick, and this is coming from somebody who is a Sixers fan, not only because of the production that Philon showed, but I think, one, it comes in and gives a lot less stress to Maxey, and Edge come to kind of lead the backcourt minutes, but you also have somebody who can initiate an offense, make plays for others. I know he has some questions about some of the bursts, some of the athleticism, but I do think that the craftiness will translate and allow him to still be a viable backup option for this team. Now, or how can he improve his physicality and his weight so that way he can be more of a reliable option as a defender? But I believe that that's something that can kind of come along, just because I'm sure that's something that has been drilled into him for this past year since the draft process has ended. So Philon I think is a steal here at 22, just because he takes pressure off of some of the stars you have already, and I think he can be a highly productive backup here. So I give this a A-. 23rd for the Atlanta Hawks, we have Zuby Ejiofor. This was a pick that I feel kind of just makes sense with them going Flemings earlier. I think the two kind of common needs that they needed were guard and front court depth, and Ejiofor definitely fits into the front court depth. I think he's just somebody who can come in. He's an athletic freak. He can guard almost every position, and I think this is a nice little pickup. Just somebody who's versatile. Granted, he's very limited offensively, but has a lot of promise that he can add to the Hawks immediately. Factoring in the 8th pick that they got with Flemings and this pickup that they got here at 23, I would give this haul a B+.
Okay, next up at 24, we have the Los Angeles Lakers taking Cameron Carr. Cameron Carr is an electric wing. This is somebody I'm pretty sure all three of us had a lot higher on our board than 24. Can really shoot it. Has a 7'1.5", I think, wingspan. Puts him a part of that club of guys with his size with that big of a wingspan, similar to guys like Jalen Williams, guys like that. He is kind of exactly what the Lakers need in an off-ball wing, somebody who can shoot. Devastating cutter, can play alongside Luka. As a Lakers fan, this pick made me happy. A+. I don't care if I'm biased. A+ for the Lakers taking Cameron Carr.
At 25, Sergio De La Rey coming to Dallas via kind of a trade in the late first round, picking up kind of a backup guard. We'll see what type of role he has behind Kyrie Irving. I imagine year one, it won't be too strong of a role, but just taking a flyer on an international prospect. Don't mind that one here for Dallas, especially picking him up via a trade. So I'll give this one a C+.
At 26, the Spurs have taken Terrace Reed, and I kind of like this because with Quaintance taken earlier, you have a big who has some good upside, but obviously has injury concerns, but you also can kind of come in and add another potential big who could play alongside Wemby in some minutes, or at least be a solid backup to him, and you just have some more front court depth. I think they have enough guards, and you're pretty confident that those are going to turn into something. So just adding some all-around depth I think is really important here, and that's kind of what they did. So with this pick, I would also give them a B or B plus. So 27, the Boston Celtics, they wind up getting Chris Sinak, and I think one of the things that they needed to come away with from this draft was somebody who could give you some rim protection, and I think Chris Sinak can do that. But he also can fit into this Celtics like offensive system because I think he's somebody who can stretch out and shoot the ball a little bit, and I'm sure that he'll definitely be encouraged to do that at the next level. And he's a very raw big man, but I think that like if you get a few years in the league, like he can turn into something that's a really nice piece. And I think with some of the bigs that were available in this class, there weren't really a lot of highly touted guys, but I think he could be one of the better bigs in this class a few years down the road. So since they addressed a need and got a piece who could be pretty solid in the long run, and they have a history of really hitting on some of these later round picks, I would give this pick probably a B minus.
Next up at 28, the Brooklyn Nets selected Joshua Jefferson from Iowa State. I think he fits exactly what they've been doing. Like they just like taking players who can pass the ball and have really good playmaking field. You have a lot of guys who can do that now, like right along the vein of like Danny Wolf, Yegor Demon, the guys they took last year, guys who can really pass. He can do that. He also can do a little bit more than that, though. Last year, he shot it well from three. He's just kind of like a really good glue guy and older player to put with some of this young core. Really good. He's a pretty good selection for Brooklyn here. I'll have to give him just a C.
Rounding out the first round, almost there at 29, the Kings trading up for this pick. They pick Alex Caravan. I see some sort of vision here, and the logic is trying to surround their next future point guard and Darius Acuff with shooting. But the timeline aspect of it is a little bit confusing. You still got these vets on the roster. Then you draft a guy in his, coming close to his mid-20s in a few years at 29. I think he'll provide value right away, but the timeline of him and a 19-year-old guard, a little bit confusing there. So I'm going to give this one a C as well.
At 30, this pick originally belonged to the Dallas Mavericks, but they traded it to the Suns, and the Suns went ahead and got Koa Pete. Now, Koa Pete is a guy who I wasn't really that high on in this draft cycle, but I still think he has a lot of nice tools. Like, he's pretty athletic guy. He's a little bit undersized, but I think he has the athleticism to maybe make up for it. And I think he's a guy who, like, offensively, he understands like just where to go with the ball. Like, I think the passing and like the athleticism are the two things that I like the most about him. And the Suns, they have a decent bit of shooting and like offensive creation around, at least at the perimeter, to maybe find a way to implement Koa offensively. He's not really a shooter right now, but I think there is a way that you can use some of his passing to unlock some more of his offensive game, as well as some of the above the rim capabilities that he has. And I think there is also room for him to be a valuable defender. So I really do like this swing for the Suns, and I would have to give this pick probably a C+.